Be Wealthy and Smart, episode 805.
Step into a world of wealth and financial freedom without budgets, boredom, or bosses on Be Wealthy and Smart. And now, here's your host, Linda P. Jones.
Welcome to Be Wealthy and Smart. I'm Linda P. Jones, America's Wealth Mentor, empowering women and men worldwide to financial freedom. On today's show, we're going to talk about new venture startups that are booming because one of the big $3 billion fintechs talks about how new companies are being formed at a furious clip, and many of these firms, retailers, restaurants, or professional services, are looking more and more like tech companies. This goes along with my thesis of the quantum age and how we're moving into a lot of different new technologies. And we're really changing how the economy looks and how the average company does business. And COVID is actually helping to speed that up by approximately 10 years, some people think. So I want to share this article with you from CNBC. It was written by Hugh Sohn, and he titled it, "Boom Times Have Returned for Venture-Backed Startups," says co-founder of $3 billion fintech Brex. That's B-R-E-X, in case you're not familiar with it. And the article says, the coronavirus pandemic should have meant disaster for Brex, the high-flying Silicon Valley startup that lends to thousands of other startups. Founded by a pair of Brazilian 20-somethings who dropped out of Stanford in their freshman year, the company's ascent has been dizzying, even by Silicon Valley standards. Brex reached unicorn status, that is, $1 billion in value plus, in 2018, months after launching its first product, a corporate charge card for startups. Then it doubled in value last year and raised funding in May at a $3 billion valuation. Flush with nearly $500 million in venture capital funding, Brex plastered San Francisco with ads, went on a takeover spree, and even opened a restaurant. Its free spending raised eyebrows in the VC community. Some of them wondered, in the aftermath of the WeWork debacle, if Brex was another private company pumped up beyond reason. Its main product, an unsecured high-limit charge card for startups, exposes it to risky, money-losing companies that could fail in droves in a recession. But after a rocky few months in which Brex abruptly pulled customers' credit lines and let go of employees, more on that later, something unexpected happened. In the middle of a once-a-century pandemic that left millions of Americans unemployed, boom times have returned for American startups and Brex's 25-year-old co-founder, Henrique Dubergas. We've seen lots of our customers raise a lot of money and spend a lot of money investing for next year or whenever the economy returns, Dubergas said, wearing a t-shirt and jeans via Zoom from his new home base in Los Angeles. I think 2021 is going to be an amazing year for everyone in tech, honestly. It's a sharp turnaround from earlier this year when COVID-19 seemed to be the catalyst for a long-expected reckoning for the venture-backed world. In March, famed venture firm Sequoia Capital warned startups to expect the worst in a memo reminiscent of its famous 2008 RIP Good Times memo. To conserve cash, previously spendthrift companies cut thousands of jobs and raised funding at punitive terms. But the hand-wringing in Silicon Valley proved to be short-lived. Public markets recovered in March and April after the Federal Reserve and lawmakers took a series of unprecedented actions to flood markets with liquidity and inject cash into people's bank accounts. That's kept dollars flowing throughout the venture ecosystem. Investments in U.S.-based startups rose 30% in the third quarter to $36.5 billion, driven by a record number of so-called mega rounds of at least $100 million, according to CB Insights. Applications to form new businesses surged 77% in the quarter, according to Census Bureau data. VCs are getting a lot of returns, and these guys, they've already had 3 homes and planes and a boat, so they need to deploy the money somewhere, Dubergas said. Everyone considers public markets to be expensive now, so private markets are where a lot of the money is going. Dubergas has a unique view into the health of American startups. Brex says it lends to tens of thousands of them, using real-time data on their businesses to help make dynamic lending decisions. After a few lean months earlier this year, when spending dipped more than 10%, average per customer spending on Brex cards is now at a record level, roughly 5% higher than it was before the pandemic, he said. The categories have shifted, of course. Startup employees are spending far less on seamless orders and Uber trips as restaurant and rideshare transactions plunge 60% and 40% from pre-pandemic levels, the company said. Travel and events-related spending is only 25% of what it was before, but growth in online marketing and recurring software costs like Amazon Web Services and work-from-home stipends has made up for those declines, he said. As the census data suggests, new companies are being formed at a furious clip, and many of these firms, whether they are retailers, restaurants, or professional services, are looking more and more like tech companies, said Dubergas. For example, business owners that may have relied on brick and mortar in the past now mostly sell through eBay and Amazon and Shopify and Etsy and Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, all these different sales channels, he said. That has benefited Brex and other fintech firms offering small businesses the most modern experiences, companies like Dubergas referred to as frenemies, payments firm Square, and e-commerce platform Shopify. Brex customer acquisition has grown in line with the 77% jump in third quarter new business formation, according to Dubergas. We've never seen more business being created, he said. The restaurants that shut down next to you, some other entrepreneur is going there and starting something else, you know? Dubergas said that if he were starting a company now, he would look to take advantage of knock-on effects from major shifts like the adoption of remote work. His company went to a remote-first model in September. What are the second-degree changes from remote work, he said. If remote work is more popular and people move out of the big cities to more suburban places, what are the new things they're going to need? It's hard not to find Dubergas' story and his relatively unguarded nature appealing. Along with his co-founder, Pedro Franceschi, Dubergas grew up in Brazil as a tech-obsessed teenager. Dubergas is from Sao Paulo, while Franceschi is from Rio de Janeiro. Dubergas was just 14 when he started his first company and later founded a payments firm with Franceschi before moving to the U.S. to attend Stanford University. The pair dropped out after 8 months and started Brex after joining Y Combinator when they observed that many of their fellow entrepreneurs struggled to get corporate credit cards. After the pandemic struck, Brex has initially denied the need to cut jobs. As the situation grew more serious, Dubergas and Franceschi backtracked, and they let go of 62 employees, or about 17% of its workforce, in late May. We kind of said we weren't going to do it, and then things started getting worse, and we're like, oh no, he said. We ended up having to do it anyway. We lost some trust because of that. I think my learning from that is to never say we're never going to do it again. When I tell Dubergas the story of a Brex customer I'd spoken to, he immediately sits up straighter, his easygoing demeanor changing slightly. The customer, an online retailer, attributed his success in part to the ample credit Brex gave to him before the pandemic. Brex said it gives companies 10 to 20 times more credit than traditional lenders like American Express. But in April, Brex suddenly pulled nearly all of his credit, kneecapping his business. While Brex positions itself as a new economy leader that understands founders, it relies on a pair of jumbo credit lines from old-school banks, Barclays and Credit Suisse, for a total of more than $300 million in revolving credit facilities to make loans. If Brex customers had losses beyond a certain threshold, the banks could have yanked all the credit lines, which would have been a disaster. In March and April, no one knew what was going to happen in the world, Dubergas said. We had to make some tough decisions and reduce a bunch of credit lines, and to make sure we didn't have the losses that tripped our covenants with our banks, so they would keep giving us credit and we could keep serving businesses. He continued, these decisions were done for the greater good in some ways, which is like, look, if we could get our credit lines called or something like that happens, we're going to have to shut all the credit lines. Losses climbed but were manageable, according to Dubergas. We assume that 70% of our businesses are going to go out of business every couple of years because we serve startups and most startups fail, he said. I think that's known and that's okay. All of our credit models and all of our processes are assuming a big amount of churn due to a business failure. By June, Brex was again growing briskly, Dubergas said, and the company restored many of its customers' credit lines. Brex would have been fine had the situation worsened, he said, because of its ample cash stockpile. It's not lost on Dubergas that while many of his VC-backed customers, particularly those in technology and online businesses, are thriving, millions of Americans have lost their jobs. JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon, who runs the biggest U.S. bank, said this week that the pain was concentrated among the bottom 20% of wage earners, many of whom have spent down their savings as the pandemic drags on. The world is unfortunately getting more and more polarized in terms of the haves and have-nots, Dubergas said. It turns out we serve a lot of the haves in startup land. A lot of it is about tracking from the old sectors of the economy to the new sectors of the economy. Brex is a few years away from an initial public offering, though it's likely to tap markets in a different way than before, Dubergas said. He recognizes that the company needs to diversify its funding sources since his bank lenders could pull their loan facilities. As soon as next year, Brex is likely to invite rating agencies to scrutinize the company's loan receivables and ultimately create bonds to sell to big investors like insurance companies and pensions, he said. In the meantime, Dubergas said he no longer tries to convince skeptics that Brex is built for the long term. For a long time, we did our best to counteract that and share about why Brex is a good business. And the only thing that brought us was more competitors, he said. At this point, I'd rather leave the VC community thinking it's unsustainable. End of article. Well, what an interesting business model to provide loans to venture capital companies. And if those venture capital companies are starting technology companies or online businesses, they have a lot lower overhead than most traditional businesses do. I've talked about this for years, how online business really changed that model and made it so inexpensive to start your own business. So yes, while a lot of new startup businesses will still fail and have that high failure rate of around 90% fail in 5 years, the ones that succeed are likely to be a lot more successful and have more profits to the bottom line because they have a lot less overhead. They don't need as many employees, and in fact, a lot of them can survive with contract workers. They don't need brick and mortar overhead. They don't have to pay rents. They don't have high startup costs, and in many cases, don't even need a customer base and don't even need a huge marketing budget because they can run Facebook ads very inexpensively or ads to Instagram or other social media. And a lot of social media is even free. So depending on how they do their marketing, it can be a very low-cost, high-profit business. While online businesses have been around for a long time, they're really getting more into focus now as people realize they can start businesses with simply a computer and an internet connection. It's easier than ever to start your side hustle if that's what you want to do, or a business for your main form of income. Either way, online businesses are here to stay, are much more profitable and low cost than they've ever been, and now people are even more willing to meet online. So things like online telemedicine and businesses that had required in-person visits in the past are now going to be able to be done over the internet via Zoom or some other online meeting place. Rather than having to have a physical store that people come to, Amazon has proven that you don't need that. So the business models of very traditional businesses are changing, and businesses are rapidly trying to get that online presence that maybe they didn't have before in a very strong way. Because they're seeing now that customers are willing to shop online, they're willing to wait for products to be delivered by mail, but they still don't like to pay shipping costs. So most online businesses are having to include shipping and handling or require a minimum purchase in order to make shipping and handling free. A lot of the ways that we've done business in the past have really changed during this time of COVID, and many people think we won't go back to the way that they were before. high-end designer brands have really learned this lesson because they wanted to have the physical locations and the high-touch customer service. But what they lacked was a strong online presence. And only Burberry has really been an online marketer that has done it the right way, in my opinion. Burberry is a luxury retailer who would have fashion shows online and would bring a high-end feel into an online environment. A lot of other high-end merchandisers have yet to do that. So I think that's going to be a more important component to really draw people in to some extra entertainment or extra ways to showcase merchandise and to build a good relationship with the customer that doesn't require the customer actually going to the store. So I think we'll see businesses, shopping malls, high-end stores get more creative in the way that they're marketing their products and services. Anyway, I like this article and thought it was an interesting conversation piece to bring to your attention, so I hope you enjoyed that. And we'll see what other trends start to pop up during this COVID economy that seems to be here with us now for longer than we expected. It's almost the holiday season, and I wanted to remind you, if you're looking for books as gifts, You're Already a Wealth Heiress, Now Think and Act Like One, 6 Practical Steps to Make It a Reality Now, has sold out the last 2 Christmases. So if this is something you want for yourself or to give to a family member or friend, now is the time to pick it up on Amazon or any local bookstore. It was rated one of the top wealth books by Book Authority, and I share my wealth building formula, my millionaire action plan, the 6 steps to wealth, and a lot of really easy to implement financial ideas that are going to get you to financial freedom faster. That's all for today. Until next time, live the good life and be wealthy and smart.
Thank you for listening to Be Wealthy and Smart with Linda P. Jones. Share the wealth and tell your family and friends about the show. Check out our website, blog, and social media for more riches at www.bewealthyandsmart.com.